All right, good morning. How are you, bud? You're excited. Oh, I like those. Hey, those light up. And a Halloween thing. Man, you can't beat that with a stick. That's good. All right. You see that excitement? That's good. All right. We're going to continue on. We're making our way through Genesis, and we're rapidly approaching the end. It's not, well, to you it may have seemed like it's taken forever, but it seems fairly quick to me. How about that? We're going to be in chapters 40 and 41 this morning. We may make it into 42. I will say this, just to warn you. We're going to end this class about 5 minutes early. I see the excitement. You're starting to act more like Elliot here. I'm going to step back and talk to the teens real quick, but we're going to end about 5 minutes early. All right. So I hope that's okay with everybody. You're not too disappointed. All right. Genesis chapter 40. We are making the turn in the story of Joseph. I hope you remember. It's Dr. Youngblood from Harding. His phrase for Joseph's story of wardrobe malfunction. Right? The clothes don't function the way that they're supposed to. They don't for the first part of the story, but then you're going to see a shift in this part. So let's just jump into chapter 40 and look at about the first 8 verses, sorry. Sometime after this, so Joseph is still in prison after the issue with Potiphar's wife. The cupbearer of the king of Egypt and his baker committed an offense against their lord, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with his 2 officers, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and he put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard in the prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard appointed Joseph to be with them, and he attended them, and they continued for some time in custody. And one night they both dreamed, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were confined in the prison, each his own dream, each dream with its own interpretation. When Joseph came to them in the morning, he saw that they were troubled, so he asked Pharaoh's officers who were with him in custody in his master's house, "Why are your faces downcast today?" And they said to him, "We have had dreams. There's no one to interpret them." And Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Please tell them to me." All right, so we have a cupbearer and a baker. There is a possibility, don't know that it's how likely it is, but there is a possibility that these 2 are not Egyptian. They could be someone that is serving at the pleasure of the king of Egypt as somebody who's been conquered. They may have been slaves of some kind. We see this in other places. If we think down through the Old Testament a little bit, we find Nehemiah serving as the cupbearer for Cyrus. Right, as Judah gets ready to go back home. So it's a possibility. The other possibility is that it says they've committed offense and they've made him angry. Now, as these two positions, they have a great deal of influence and a great responsibility to keep Pharaoh safe. One of the ways that a king might be gotten rid of is to be poisoned. And so there is a theory, you don't know how likely it is, but it's something to think about, that the offense that has happened is that Pharaoh has gotten sick after a meal. And these 2, as being responsible for what he gets, may be responsible in some way or derelict in their duties. And so he sends them to prison. And they each have a dream. Different dreams, same night. The Egyptians and dreams, that's quite a story in itself. They put a lot of emphasis on dreams, what they could possibly mean. They have an entire interpretive system worked out and books on this particular subject. But with these 2 being where they are in prison, they have no access to this. And so it's obviously going to trouble them. What could this possibly mean? All right. Now, we also notice that that Joseph asked the question. It's noticeable that there's something wrong with them. So Joseph asked the question, what seems to be the issue? And they say, we've got a dream, we've had dreams, we've had no one to interpret them. And Joseph says, do not interpretations belong to God? Okay. Anybody notice a change? I think it's chapter 37 in Joseph's original dreams, that Joseph is happy to announce his dreams to his brothers with no mention of God telling him what they mean. He goes to his brothers and says, I had this dream. We're all gathering these sheaves, right? Mine standing there, you all bow down to me. What do you think, right? It's like, you see this, and another one of the sun, the moon, the stars, everything bowing down to him, right? So there's been a bit of a shift, which goes along with Joseph's life. It's been kind of a downward trajectory, and it's getting ready to make quite an upswing here. All right, the chief cupbearer told his dream to Joseph, it's verse 9, and said to him, in my dream there was a vine before me, and on the vine there were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, its blossoms shot forth, and the clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand. I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. Joseph said to him, this is the interpretation, 3 branches or 3 days. In 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your office, and you shall place Pharaoh's cup in his hand as formerly when you were his cupbearer. Only remember me when it's well with you, and please do me the kindness to mention me to Pharaoh, and so get me out of this house. For I indeed was stolen out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also I have done nothing that they should put me into the pit. And when the chief baker saw that the interpretation was favorable, he said to Joseph, I also had a dream. There were 3 cake baskets on my head. And in the uppermost basket there were all sorts of baked food for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating it out of the basket on my head. And Joseph answered and said, this is the interpretation. 3 baskets are 3 days. In 3 days Pharaoh will lift up your head from you and hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat the flesh from you. On the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, he made a feast for all his servants, lifted up the head of the cupbearer and the head of the chief baker among his servants. He restored the chief cupbearer to his position. He placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. He hanged the chief baker as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet the cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. Okay, we have the interpretation, which seems fairly straightforward. Right? 3 days, something's going to happen to each one of you. It's just fun for me to imagine how this works. To the cupbearer, he says, in 3 days, Pharaoh's going to lift up your head, right? Like, yes. And to the baker, in 3 days, Pharaoh's going to lift up your head all the way off, right? It's not going to be pretty. It's again, this is not a good prediction for the baker. We think of the Egyptians and the treatment of the body after death, mummification, and really paying attention to that. This is an incredibly insulting way to die, to be not just executed, but then for your body to be impaled on a stick for, birds to eat. I mean, this not going to be good. And Joseph hopes that with the cupbearer, that good word will come from him, about who Joseph is, about the fact that he's there. First his brothers sell him, and then he has this run-in with Potiphar's wife. He's done nothing wrong, and maybe Pharaoh will let him out, but we find the chief cupbearer does not remember Joseph, which is a big, it's not a big shock. He just doesn't think of it. Now, chapter 41, we get something new. After 2 whole years, Pharaoh dreamed that he was standing by the Nile, and behold, there came up out of the Nile 7 cows, attractive and plump, and they fed in the reed grass. And behold, 7 other cows, ugly and thin, came up out of the Nile after them, and stood by the other cows on the bank of the Nile. And the ugly, thin cows ate up the 7 attractive, plump cows, and Pharaoh awoke. And he fell asleep, and he dreamed a second time. Behold, 7 ears of grain, plump and good, were growing on one stalk. And behold, after them sprouted 7 ears, thin and blighted by the east wind. The thin ears swallowed up the 7 plump, full ears, and Pharaoh awoke. Behold, it was a dream. So in the morning his spirit was troubled. He sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt and all its wise men. Pharaoh told them his dreams, but there was none who could interpret the dream to Pharaoh. All right, and we have this same kind of thing. The Pharaoh's dreams that obviously mean something, and he has nobody to tell him what they mean. I'm going to say if this sounds familiar, it is, but kind of in reverse. Because you fast forward several generations, and you find a young man by the name of Daniel in Babylon, and Nebuchadnezzar has a dream, and no one can tell him what it is. Right? Now, well, I guess what we got here in Genesis anyway, the people who do this for a living for Pharaoh at least have a bit of an advantage over the people in Babylon during the time of Daniel, because at that time, Nebuchadnezzar wouldn't tell him the dream. They had to tell him the dream and the interpretation to see if they were on the level, right? None of them would do that, by the way, but that's another story for another day. Nobody can figure this out, and it's then. Took 2 years, but it's then that the cupbearer goes, I know a guy, right? You probably don't want to start the conversation with the king of Egypt. I know a guy I met in prison, right? But I do. I know a guy that we were in prison together, and he can do this. And so here he comes. The chief cupbearer said to Pharaoh, I remember my offenses today. When Pharaoh was angry with his servants, put me and the chief baker in custody in the house of the captain of the guard. We told him, the young Hebrew servant of the captain of the guard, when we told him, he interpreted our dreams to us, giving us an interpretation to each man according to his dream. And as he interpreted to us, so it came about. I was restored to my office, the baker was hanged. Pharaoh sent and called Joseph. They quickly brought him out of the pit, and when he had shaved himself and changed his clothes, he came in before Pharaoh. And we see the change get ready to start, right? The way that clothes have operated so far in the Joseph story. The coat that Jacob gives him that's supposed to elevate him ends up getting him sold. The garment that he wears in Potiphar's house that ought to be the thing that kind of keeps him safe is what gets him in trouble. And now he's coming out of prison, and what do we do as we get ready to go meet Pharaoh after he shaves and changes his clothes? We've got something new getting ready to happen. Pharaoh said to Joseph, I've had a dream. There's no one who can interpret it, and I've heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. Joseph answered Pharaoh, it is not in me. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer. And then Pharaoh lays out the dreams for Joseph. Move down to verse 25. Joseph said to Pharaoh, the dreams of Pharaoh are one. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. 7 good cows are 7 years. The 7 good ears are 7 years. The dreams are one. 7 lean and ugly cows that came up after them are 7 years. And the 7 empty ears blighted by the east wind are also 7 years of famine. It is, as I told Pharaoh, God has shown to Pharaoh what he is about to do. There will come 7 years of great plenty throughout the land of Egypt, but after them there will arise 7 years of famine, and all the plenty will be forgotten in the land of Egypt. The famine will consume the land. The plenty will be unknown in the land by reason of the famine that will follow, for it will be very severe. The doubling of Pharaoh's dream means that the thing is fixed by God, and God will shortly bring it about. Now, therefore, let Pharaoh select a discerning and wise man and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh appoint overseers over the land and take 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt during the 7 plentiful years, And let them gather all the food of these good years that are coming and store up grain under the authority of Pharaoh for food in the cities, and let them keep it. That food shall be a reserve for the land against the 7 years of famine that are to occur in the land of Egypt, so that the land may not perish through the famine. The proposal pleased Pharaoh and all his servants, and Pharaoh said to his servants, "Can we find a man like this, in whom is the Spirit of God?" And Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has shown you all this, there is none so discerning and wise as you are. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall order themselves as you command. Only as regards the throne will I be greater than you." And Pharaoh said to Joseph, "See, I have set you over all the land of Egypt." Pharaoh took his signet ring from his hand, put it on Joseph's hand, clothed him in garments of fine linen, and put a gold chain about his neck. And he made him ride in his second chariot, and they called out before him, "Bow the knee." Thus he set him over all the land of Egypt. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I am Pharaoh, and without your consent no one shall lift up hand or foot in all the land of Egypt." Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphanath Paneah, and he gave him in marriage Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On. So Joseph went out over the land of Egypt. It's taken, in verse 46, Joseph is 30 years old when he enters the service of the king. 13 years. 13 long years, we might say. Right? 17 years old when he goes and visits his brothers, somewhere around there, when they strip him of his garments and sell him. Then to Potiphar's house. Then to prison. I mean, it's one thing after another, but then the turn. There's a theme, seems to be a theme, in Joseph's life here. That in all of this, in the being the favored, to being thought of as just worth whatever we can get out of him to get him out of the country, a prisoner, that God is with him in the whole mess. And it takes 13 years for it to turn around. It's not something that we don't know. But God works on a different schedule than us. Right? If I'm Joseph, I want this fixed very quickly. Right? I want God to do something to get me home. When my brothers sell me to traders that are going to take me to Egypt. When it looks like maybe things might be on a bit of an upswing, Joseph seems to prosper in Potiphar's house, only to be brought back down again. I'm certain that he's going, I want this fixed. God doesn't work necessarily on Joseph's schedule, and he does not work on ours. What this reminds us, I hope what this reminds us, that we don't ever forget, is that God will make it right. We have no idea when. This the old saying, right? It'll all come out in the wash. Anybody ever heard that one? Right. I remember saying that once. I can't even remember the situation that was going on. Talking to my dad. I said, yeah, I guess it'll all come out in the wash. And Dad goes, that's right. We just don't know when wash day is. Right? And that's it. We hang on. We hang on when it seems like it's going the wrong way. It seems that in all of this, that Joseph hangs on. I know I mentioned this whenever we talked about Joseph and Potiphar's wife. I don't know if we realize how easy it would have been for Joseph to say yes. Right? A place where nobody knows you. You're a foreigner. You have zero when it comes, really. You're really not in a position to have much power here. And just to say yes, just to go along, but he doesn't. And it cost him, right? Right? If we're writing the story, we go, Joseph says no, and God rescues him and takes him back home, right? But that's not what happens. Joseph says no, and it gets worse. But we also watch as Joseph, when the two come to him and say, we've had these dreams, and we don't know what they mean, that Joseph goes, God does. Now, I got to tell you, and I don't know, okay? I don't know if that would be the first thought that I would have after going through what Joseph's gone through. You? And even after, right? Even after he says, okay, I'm going to do this. God has told me what it is that these dreams mean. And whenever this turns out really well for you, because it's going to, there, Mr. Cupbearer, don't you forget me. But 2 years go by. And then, when he's finally called again, when Pharaoh says, they tell me you can tell dreams, Joseph's go-to is, I can't. God will. I'd like to say that we will see everything get better in our own lifetime. We may not. How about that? How's that for cheery? But the truth of the matter is, what we notice from this and from the rest of Scripture itself is that God will set it all right at some point. And it's up to Him to do. Okay? I looked, I can't really find a connection, but there's got to be some connection here. Verse 45. Pharaoh renames Joseph, which that's one of those things that happens in foreign kingdoms. But he gives him in marriage Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On. Now that name starts to sound familiar. Potiphar. Wasn't it Potiphar's house? Is there some connection? And I don't know. I can't find one. And maybe it's just because maybe that's a common name. I don't know. It seems odd to me that that'd be a common name, but so does Zaphanath Paneah. That doesn't sound like a common name to me either, right? But what we find is Joseph, again, I hope we caught the clothes thing. And Pharaoh dresses him in fine linen, gives him his own signet ring and a gold chain on his neck. So now things are making the swing. During the 7 years, this verse 47, during the 7 plentiful years, the earth produced abundantly. He gathered up all the food of these 7 years which occurred in the land of Egypt and put the food in the cities. He put in every city the food from the fields around. Joseph stored up grain in great abundance, like the sand of the sea, until he ceased to measure it, for it could not be measured. Before the year of famine came, 2 sons were born to Joseph. Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, bore them to him. Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh. For, he said, God has made me forget all my hardship in all my father's house. The name of the second he called Ephraim. For God made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. 7 years of plenty that occurred in the land of Egypt came to an end. 7 years of famine began to come, as Joseph had said. There was famine in all the land, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread. When all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, go to Joseph. What he says to you, do. When the famine had spread over all the land, Joseph opened the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe in the land of Egypt. Moreover, all the earth came to Egypt to Joseph to buy grain, because the famine was severe over all the earth. There's something to point out here, and we're going to come back and pick it up a little bit later, and that is the two sons born to Joseph. Manasseh is the firstborn, and Ephraim. Right? Just we'll keep those in mind, because it's going to come into play later on, especially as Jacob gets ready to pass on. And we watch what Jacob does with these two boys. It's really, really fun, okay? All right, we're going to go on to 42. Ready? Jacob learned that there was grain for sale in Egypt. And he said to his sons, "Why do you look at one another?" And he said, "Behold, I have heard that there is grain for sale in Egypt. Go down and buy grain for us there, that we may live and not die." So 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt. But Jacob did not send Benjamin, Joseph's brother, with his brothers, for he feared that harm might happen to him. Thus the sons of Israel came to buy among the others who came. The famine was great in the land of Canaan. Joseph was governor over the land. He was the one who sold to all the people of the land. Joseph's brothers came and bowed themselves before him with their faces to the ground. Joseph saw his brothers and recognized them, but he treated them like strangers and spoke roughly to them. "Where do you come from?" he said. They said, "From the land of Canaan to buy food." Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. And Joseph remembered the dreams that he had dreamed of them. He said, "You are spies. You've come to see the nakedness of the land." And they said to him, "No, my lord, your servants have come to buy food. We're all sons of one man. We're honest men. Your servants have never been spies." He said to them, "No, it's the nakedness of the land that you've come to see." And they said, "We, your servants, are 12 brothers, sons of one man in the land of Canaan. Behold, the youngest is this day with our father, and one is no more." But Joseph said to them, "It is as I said to you, you're spies. By this you'll be tested. By the life of Pharaoh you shall not go from this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of you, and let him bring your brother while you remain confined, that your words may be tested, whether there is truth in you, or else by the life of Pharaoh, surely you are spies." And he put them all together in custody for 3 days. On the third day, Joseph said to them, "Do this and you'll live, for I fear God. If you're honest men, let one of your brothers remain confined where you are in custody, and let the rest go and carry grain for the famine of your households. Bring your youngest brother to me, so that your words will be verified and you will not die." And they did so. They said to one another, "In truth, we are guilty concerning our brother, in that we saw the distress of his soul when he begged us, and we did not listen. This is why distress has come upon us." And Reuben answered, "Did I not tell you not to sin against the boy, but you didn't listen? So now there comes a reckoning for his blood." They did not know that Joseph understood them, for there was an interpreter between them. He turned away from them and he wept. And he returned to them and spoke to them, and he took Simeon from them and bound him before their eyes. Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with grain and to replace every man's money in his sack, and to give them provisions for the journey. This was done for them. Okay. Come on, Joseph's got to have some fun here. Right? The brothers show up, and they don't know him. Well, why would they? Why would they even be looking for him? As far as they know, he's gone. Right? That's even what they say. The youngest one's still at home, and one is no more. That's all they say. And again, Joseph remembers his dreams. When they come in and they bow down before him, and he's going, "Look, here it is." Again, it's probably not flattering to Joseph, but I think that Joseph is having some fun here. Huh? So who are you? Where'd you come from? And he speaks through an interpreter, which is just great, right? Anybody ever wanted to do that? Be able to speak the language of somebody else and then hear them talk, and you act like you didn't know what they just said? Oh, that's got to be fun, right? The deal he makes is that one of you has to go back and get the youngest. And so he waits for 3 days, and then finally he just sends one of them back, or keeps one and sends the rest back. It's interesting that Reuben is the, hey, I told you so, right? I told you we shouldn't do this, and now there's trouble. Simeon, I don't really understand. I really don't. I don't understand the rationale of holding Simeon and the rest going, but that's who he chooses. But it is interesting that this is now going to be the second time that the sons of Israel show back up at home, one brother short, and more money than they left with, and money and more things than they left with, because Joseph has them load the grain and send the money back with them as well. To watch this play out is good. They loaded their donkeys with their grain and they departed. As one of them opened his sack to give his donkey fodder at the lodging place, he saw his money. And he said to his brother, my money has been put back. Here it is, in the mouth of my sack. At this, their hearts failed them. And they turned trembling to one another, saying, what is this that God has done to us? When they came to Jacob their father in the land of Canaan, they told him all that had happened, saying, the Lord of the land, spoke roughly to us, took us to be spies. We said to him, we're honest men, we've never been spies. We're 12 brothers, sons of our father. One is no more, the youngest is this day with our father in the land of Canaan. Then the Lord of the land, said to us, by this I shall know that you're honest men. Leave one of your brothers with me, take grain for the famine of your households, and go your way. Bring your youngest brother to me. Then I'll know that you're not spies, but honest men. I'll deliver your brother to you, and you shall trade in the land. They emptied their sacks. Every man's bundle of money was in his sack. When their father saw their bundles of money, they were afraid. And Jacob their father said to them, you have bereaved me of my children. Joseph is no more, and Simeon is no more, and now you would take Benjamin. All this has come against me. Reuben said to his father, kill my 2 sons, if I do not bring him back to you. Put him in my hands, and I will bring him back. But he said, my son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead. He's the only one left. If harm should happen to him on the journey that you are to make, you would bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to Sheol. Just a quick note, it doesn't appear that Jacob has been cured of his favoritism yet. Right? Which I don't know that at this point that it's ever dawned on him. And it may not have. That the favoritism shown to Joseph has started this whole thing in motion. Right? Or it's had at least it's had an effect on it. And then Reuben says, here, I've got 2 sons. Which they got to be thrilled, right? You can kill them if you want. I mean, that's, right? But I guess it's just that idea of going, I'm certain that this is going to work, and I'm going to take care of this, and I've got it handled. But here, Jacob is going, Joseph's gone, his brother's all I've got left, and that's it. It's like, what are the rest of them, right? Yeah, the others stand around there going, well, okay, we see how much we matter, right? And he leaves by saying, no, he's not going. Now he will go. We've got just a few minutes. Let's just go ahead and dive into this. We got through this faster than I thought. The famine was severe. When they'd eaten the grain, their father said to them, go again and buy food. But Judah said, the man solemnly warned us, saying, you shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. If you'll send our brother with us, we'll go down and buy you food. But if you will not send him, we will not go down. For the man said to us, you shall not see my face unless your brother's with you. Israel said, why did you treat me so badly as to tell the man that you had another brother? They replied, the man questioned us carefully about ourselves and our kindred, saying, is your father still alive, and do you have another brother? What we told him was an answer to these questions. Could we in any way know that he would say, bring your brother down? Judah said to Israel, his father, send the boy with me. We will arise and go, that we may live and not die, both we and you, and also our little ones. I will be a pledge of his safety, From my hand you shall require him. If I do not bring him back and set him before you, then let me bear the blame forever. If we had not delayed, we would have now returned twice. We've mentioned Judah last week, and we see the change in Judah, right? From this point, with this little interchange with Jacob, it seems as though Judah is going to begin to function almost as the firstborn now, as the one who's going to be responsible for all of this. Judah is the one who suggests selling him to start with, right? The rest of them, you take this for however you want to look at it, but the rest of them say, well, let's kill him. And Judah goes, we ought to make a little money out of this, right? We all we're going to get is a dead brother this way, but if we do it the other way, we can have a little something. And on his family line, as we saw in chapter 38. It's a Canaanite woman who cares more about carrying on Judah's line than Judah does. But now we begin to see a change in him as well. Reuben says, here are my two sons, take them, right? You can kill them if we don't come back. Judah goes a step further, right? I'll take him, and if I don't bring him back, you can kill me. Something about Reuben that just gets mentioned in just one little spot. It's back in chapter 35. And I think it's going to get referred to again. Reuben, the I told you so guy here in chapter 42. But Reuben tries to take the authority of his dad in chapter 35. It kind of mentions it, and then it just kind of moves on. Is that Reuben takes Jacob's concubines and sleeps with them. That's a sign of trying to take authority from the family. And it might be with that might have some of the reasoning behind why Jacob goes, no, I don't think I'm going to trust you with this. But Judah begins to step up. Now, we're going to stop there because we're going to get back into Joseph and the reunion with the brothers. Actually, wow, it's going to be 2 more weeks. Aren't you guys lucky? We got somebody speaking next week to the Bible class here, Don Moore from Lads to Leaders, and then the following week, Sam is going to be here with that Securing the Gift conference. So you got 2 weeks without having to hear me talk. Rejoice. I tell you what, we'll start 5 minutes early. How's that? Let's pray as we close. Father, we love you so much, and we're thankful for who you are. We are in awe of watching you work through your people. We appreciate and hope in your faithfulness, that you will make all things right, that you are the one who has the answers, and that if we will listen and we will follow, that we'll be blessed. It's hard, Father, sometimes in the middle of things that don't look good for us to hold on to that trust. Keep these stories in our minds, please. That we remember that you won't ever leave us, you won't forsake us, and you won't let us down. Thank you, Father, for our time together this morning. We love you so much. In Jesus' name, amen.